with generative AI being the latest trend, it's also a type of artificial intelligence that kind of enhances our abilities. So I do not think it will replace, rather enhances us to creatively improve or summarize and analyze unstructured data. So unstructured data could be either text, voice, code, or images. It could be any shape or form, right? And within the financial services sector, especially in the investment side of things, many of the C-suite are already thinking about improving artificial intelligence within their organization, implementing generative AI, and also because it provides the best return on investment as of date, even with the macroeconomic uncertainty that we see today, right? It could be either a traditional investment bank or a fintech, doesn't matter. It could be in the capital markets, banking, investments, or even the insurance sector. There are a lot of innovative things happening. One of the key goals for the C-suite in this sector is to eliminate risk. How can you proactively predict and accurately eliminate risk and not handle it after it happens, right? So in this space, we have seen some of the latest trends in AI, specifically in, let's say, natural language processing or large language models, also used in generative AI. We do have deep learning algorithms that are able to translate, predict content on demand, right? It could be visual content, textual, or even massive data sets. So that's the advantage. So it's not going to replace, rather enhance human abilities to process such large sets of data. Another example in the financial transformation sector is you are able to build a portfolio, you're able to optimize it in real time. You know, without even putting the effort, you can set up your parameters and it's going to able to provide you some predictions in terms of your investment growth. Plus also, let us say it can alert to fraud, even when you're sleeping, right? So you don't have to be worried about that. Yeah, and one of the things we saw earlier in the poll survey also, many people want to adopt this, but there is concern about data. Data bias is a challenge, but also data privacy, right? So number one, to have very successful AI and machine learning models to work in any sector, including impact investing, we want to ensure quality of data is good, including there is no unconscious bias, but more importantly, did the user consent to give you the data, right? So how much are you providing transparency in terms of collecting data, using their data, and also destroying the data after you have used it, not trying to keep it there beyond what the user consented to. So that's an area in the investment sector. We have a lot of implementations, especially instead of masking customer data, which is old technology, still used in many places, we are trying to come back with synthetic data. So synthetic data was generated by AI by itself based on real data that exists, and you can implement some controls where you can eliminate some unconscious bias. So you're not stepping on anyone's privacy, rather you're also taking care of some of the ethical aspects. So synthetic data can look like real data, can alleviate some of the privacy concerns, but also you can, let's say, enhance it to eliminate some of the unconscious bias, right? Another thing is also in the investment sector, like I said earlier, right? So it's not to replace human workforce, rather enhance, make it more real-time, especially in the payments sector, transactions in getting investments across geographies, converting them, and also making real-time calculations. So that's one space. One of the areas where I specialize a lot is financial inclusion, right? Especially for women, how do we get more funding to deserving women, be it in the small business or startups or even scale-ups, right? One thing what we have noticed is there are some data requirements like primary data, alternate data, secondary data that sometimes may be missing for some of these entrepreneurs, but our current AI algorithms are not typically built to handle these. Rather, they may ignore these in their decision making, right? So let us say there are a set of small business owners who are looking for some microfinancing. So even this data is excluded due to some issues in data collection. Those eligible small business owners or women entrepreneurs do not get access to credit. So how do we solve that also is to ensure that we can create data based on the current customer profile, create a futuristic potential customer profile, and create alternate ways to evaluate change data collection mechanisms so that we give opportunity to people who deserve some of the funding, not necessarily eliminate them because your AI is not built to handle some of the data issues, right? So that's very critical. And just to close it out, I really want to mention that all of this depends on, we already saw Holly spoke about it, high quality data, unbiased, unconscious bias, removed data from historic data sets, including humans in the loop, right? So not just algorithms always making decisions, but keeping humans in the loop so there is a tighter ethical AI governance in organizations that are either funding or receiving funding, right? So I just want to close it out with that. I think in my day-to-day, I do work with a lot of C-suite executives. So typically pre-pandemic, we have seen a trend of digital transformation being focused, especially with the fintechs and the new neobanks, but the pandemic actually expedited the transformation. And we also noticed as part of my role at Women in AI that regardless of your technology background or artificial intelligence background, there is more interest to learn this technology to apply to other industries where people are working on. So that's something I've always worked on, and immediately, there is no learning curve, and immediately jumped onto it. So some of the things what we have seen, especially combining my corporate role and the Women in AI role, which is a good blend of finance with sustainability where I come from. We work with a lot of women-led startups, right? So one of our goals is to ensure that they are getting the right funding, even when they are a social impact startup. So if you're a for-profit 100%, then there are challenges, but not as much as if you are a woman or a diverse founder or a startup owner, but in the sustainable space where you have to balance your revenue with impact metrics. So it could be in, let's say, like I said, economic inclusion or even climate innovation or similar kind of startups, right? So that's where I work with across both my roles. The goal is not to bring technology and use it for some technical solutions. Rather, how do I apply technology to day-to-day human challenges? Plus, not only applying technology, we also try to work with girls and women at a very early stage. So when they are trying to think about their careers, when they're trying to learn about STEM in schools, right? So that time itself, right now, it's STEM plus AI is the trend where, so regardless of whatever you choose, you have to have artificial intelligence background. You may not code, like I said earlier, but you could be someone who's applying in your field, or even someone who's a PhD or a researcher who's bringing innovative models into the place, right? So it's a good mix of both sides of what I am doing, especially now bringing ethical AI and responsible AI into these elements of education, awareness, implementation, and expansion is key. This, we think, provides equal opportunities to many women and diverse communities, and it's a roadmap to eliminate exclusion. We are still a long way there, but I think it's a start. And I want to take a step back, right? Beyond just a technology and finance, it's a holistic state of women, both in the corporate workplace as well as in the non-corporate, let's say a non-profit or entrepreneurship sector. It may not be at the early stage, it could be early stage, mid stage, but as we go into the executive level, the gap is very narrow, right? In terms of how many women enter to how many women progress to the higher levels. And that could be due to, as we know, lack of equal opportunities. Plus, also with the pandemic, we see a lot of people leaning towards flexibility at work, and also considerations towards well-being, and being an inclusive workplace is more important than, let's say, a good workplace, right? This does not mean, in my view, that women are less ambitious, right? It's not that they're less ambitious and they want to drop off the race as they enter into the executive level. But I think it just gets harder as we advance higher, because number one, it could be unrewarding if it's impacting your well-being. And number two, if it's not as inclusive, then you lack flexibility, you lack opportunities of growth. And especially this is a bigger gap in terms of women of color or someone with some kind of disabled background and things of that sort, right? So now coming to the financial services and the technology sector, we also know that the pay gap and the earnings or funding, take it whichever form, it's very less for women than men. And especially also there is a culture component to it. It could be that there are banks, but without a culture component, it could be just a legacy workplace where women are not trying to grow their career going forward, right? So what can we do? I think one of our best practices is to engage the middle managers, right? So they are the people who effectively work with the women. They work with women at the early stage. They do day-to-day reviews with them, and then they are going to be the people who recommend them for higher or C-suite careers. So what we have done is the organization policy by default has ethics and culture built into it, and that's the area I focus a lot as well. So that levels the playing field. Plus, also more importantly, the managers or the middle managers, they are not incentivized for doing DEA activities. So let us say you have profit margins, you have revenue margins, you close so much sales, you have KPIs and indicators, but for them to extend themselves to perform DEI and support women and other diverse communities, they are not equally incentivized. So that doesn't give them enough motivation. So right now we do have them inbuilt into their day-to-day KPIs and performance metrics. So that way managers do not feel like, okay, they're working on something that doesn't give them the right KPI advancement, but also it helps them to work with women at both the early stage level and helping them to move upper into the next stage of career. And in fact, one of the things we have noticed is if that manager is a woman or a person of diverse background, then they seem to better respect women with work-life balance and helping them with career growth opportunities. So I would say managers especially look up to women who could help you with mentorship or sponsorship into the next level in AI or finance. I think, I did talk about it earlier as well. So regardless of whether you are an AI professional or not, it's coming into your industry. So what you can do today to be ready for that, let's say in 3 to 5 years down the line, would be to see what are your current business use cases that you have and how can you bring in AI models. So let us say you have a data scientist in your team or a machine learning engineer in your team. You as the impact investing professional can work with them to enable the algorithmic rules to be unbiased. You can enable data quality, as well as you can also help them from business perspective, work with them to see how some of the alternative data or alternative application processes can bring more people into the investment sector, right? So those are things you don't have to do any rewriting of your job or career today, but you can work along with the data scientist to implement your business knowledge into the machine learning model. So that's one I would say. If you want, I can go into an example, but that will be the core to start with. And once you are familiar and you are into the field, then probably you can pick up areas of interest for you. So maybe you will focus on, like Julianne mentioned, in the reporting side of things, or you may focus on metrics side of things. You don't have to, again, not touch artificial intelligence coding, but rather you'll be implementing rules and the laws or guidelines or policies, top down or bottom up, and then the relevant engineering team can work to implement that, right? So as an impact investment professional, you can start, let's say, today. You don't have to learn something to wait to start in this field, integrating it in your day-to-day job.